Theodore Robert Bundy, notoriously known as Ted Bundy, is one of the most infamous serial killers in American history. His life was a terrifying combination of charm, deception, and unimaginable evil. Born on November 24, 1946, in Burlington, Vermont, Bundy's story begins with a seemingly ordinary childhood and leads to his reign of terror that claimed the lives of at least 30 young women, though some estimates suggest this number could be much higher. This detailed account, derived from court records, interviews, and psychological analyses, covers his life from birth to his execution on January 24, 1989, and includes psychological, social, and criminal details. Was born at the Elizabeth Lund Home for Unwed Mothers, a place for unmarried mothers who sought to avoid social stigma. His mother, Eleanor Louise Cowell, known as Louise, was 22 years old at the time, a secretary from a strict Methodist family in Philadelphia. Louise's pregnancy was a secret. She had come to Vermont to give birth away from home. The identity of Bundy's biological father remains uncertain to this day. Official records list him as Lloyd Marshall, a salesman and Air Force veteran, but Louise later said it was a sailor, Jack Worthington. There were rumors within the family that it could have been Louise's own father, Samuel Cowell, though this was never proven. Louise initially considered giving her son up for adoption, but her parents, Samuel and Eleanor Cowell, insisted she bring the child home. To avoid scandal, they would raise Ted as their own son and tell him that Louise was his older sister. This deception haunted Bundy throughout his life, creating deep feelings of abandonment and identity confusion. The Cowell home in Philadelphia was disorganized. Samuel Cowell was an oppressive man who violently abused animals in anger, was racist, and lashed out at family members. He was a landscaper with an explosive temper, often swinging cats by their tails or beating the family dog. Eleanor Cowell suffered from depression and agoraphobia, requiring electroconvulsive therapy. Despite this chaos, Bundy later described his grandparents as loving, though psychologists believe the violence he witnessed and perhaps endured sowed the seeds of his anger and detachment. In 1950, when Ted was 4 years old, Louise moved him to Tacoma, Washington, to live with relatives and escape her father's aggression. There, at a Methodist church program, she met Johnny Culpepper Bundy, a hospital cook. They married in 1951, and Ted took his stepfather's name, becoming Theodore Robert Bundy, Johnny, legally adopted Ted, and involved him in family activities like camping and fishing. However, Bundy felt detached from his stepfather, considering him uneducated and inferior. The couple had 4 more children, and Bundy often felt like an outsider in his own home. As a child, Bundy was shy and introverted but intelligent. With his IQ later measured at 136, he was good in school, but struggled socially, fabricating stories to impress others or bullying weaker classmates. Early signs of his disturbance emerged. At the age of 3, he arranged knives around his sleeping aunt, pointing them at her, and smiled when she woke up. In his adolescence, he became a peeping Tom, roaming the neighborhood to watch women undress, a voyeuristic habit that foreshadowed his later crimes. Bundy also admitted to being influenced by detective magazines that showed images of bound and gagged women, fueling his dark fantasies. At Woodrow Wilson High School in Tacoma, Bundy was a good student, involved in Boy Scouts and Methodist youth groups, but had few close friends. He stole skis and other items, honing his thieving skills. In 1965, he graduated and enrolled at the University of Puget Sound on a scholarship, where he began studying psychology. The next year, he transferred to the University of Washington, UW, in Seattle, where he majored in Chinese before switching to psychology. At UW, Bundy met his first serious girlfriend, Stephanie Brooks, a pseudonym, a beautiful, wealthy classmate from California. Their relationship was intense, but Stephanie ended it in 1968, citing Bundy's immaturity and lack of ambition. This rejection devastated him and created a deep identity crisis. Bundy dropped out of college, traveled east, and learned the truth about his birth from a cousin. Upon confirming it with Louise, it further deepened his feelings of abandonment. Transforming himself, Bundy returned to UW in 1969, excelling in psychology and getting involved in politics. He volunteered for Governor Daniel Evans' re-election campaign and earned praise for chasing a purse snatcher. In 1971, he met Elizabeth Klopfer, pseudonym Liz Kendall, a divorce secretary with a young daughter. Their relationship was tumultuous. Bundy was charming but manipulative, and Liz later suspected his crimes but remained loyal for many years. Bundy's transformation into a killer began in the early 1970s, though the exact timing is convoluted. Psychologists believe Stephanie's rejection and the revelation of his birth fueled his anger against women, particularly young, beautiful, long-haired college students like her. He re-enrolled in UW's law school in 1973, but struggled academically. The first confirmed murders began in 1974. On January 4th, Bundy broke into the basement apartment of 18-year-old University of Washington student Karen Sparks, pseudonym Yoni Lenz, brutally beating her with a metal bedpost and sexually assaulting her. She survived but was left brain damaged. A month later, on February 1st, he abducted 21-year-old Linda Ann Healy from her UW basement room. Healy, a psychology major and radio announcer, was bludgeoned unconscious, dressed in jeans and a white blouse, and taken to Taylor Mountain, where Bundy discarded the bodies of several victims. Her skull was found a year later. Bundy's modus operandi emerged. He often faked injury, wearing a cast or using crutches, to lure sympathetic women into helping him load books or skis into his beige Volkswagen Beetle. Once alone, he would bludgeon them with a crowbar, handcuff them, and drive them to secluded locations where he would rape, murder, and commit necrophilia. He occasionally returned to the bodies, applying makeup or washing hair until decomposition began. During 1974, Bundy intensified his actions. In March, he abducted 19-year-old Donna Gail Manson, an Evergreen State College student. In April, 18-year-old Roberta Parks disappeared from Central Washington State College. In May, 22-year-old Roberta Parks and 18-year-old Brenda Carol Ball vanished near Seattle. In June, 22-year-old Georgia Parks and 18-year-old Brenda Joy Baker were killed while hitchhiking. July was particularly bloody. On July 14th, at Lake Sammamish State Park, Bundy approached several women, using the name Ted and asking for help with his sailboat. He abducted 23-year-old Janice Otten, 19-year-old Denise Naslund in broad daylight. Witnesses described a handsome man in white tennis attire with his arm in a sling. By the end of the summer, Bundy had killed at least 8 women in Washington. He then moved to Salt Lake City to attend the University of Utah Law School. The murders continued in Utah, Idaho, and Colorado. In October 1974, 17-year-old Melissa Smith disappeared from Midvale, Utah. Her strangled body was found 9 days later. 9 days later, 17-year-old Laura Ame disappeared from there. In November, Bundy attempted to abduct 18-year-old Carol Daronch from a Salt Lake City mall, posing as a police officer. Daronch fought back and escaped, providing a description of Bundy and his car. The same day, he murdered 17-year-old Deborah Kent from a high school parking lot. In January 1975, Bundy attacked in Colorado, abducting 23-year-old Karen Campbell from the Snowmass Ski Resort. Her body was found a month later. In February, 26-year-old Julie Cunningham was killed from Vail. In March, 25-year-old Denise Oliverson disappeared while cycling in Grand Junction. Bundy's victims were often bludgeoned, strangled, and mutilated post-mortem. He sometimes kept severed heads in his apartment, committing necrophilia. Bundy's luck changed on August 16, 1975, when a Utah Highway Patrol officer pulled him over for erratic driving. The officer found handcuffs, an ice pick, a ski mask, a crowbar, and pantyhose. Bundy was arrested and soon linked to the Daronch abduction. In February 1976, he was found guilty of aggravated kidnapping and sentenced to 1 to 15 years in Utah State Prison. While in prison, he was charged with the murder of Karen Campbell in Colorado. Bundy represented himself as his own lawyer, delaying trials with his charm and legal knowledge. On June 7, 1977, during a recess at the Aspen, Colorado courthouse, he escaped by jumping from a second-story library window. He survived in the mountains for 6 days before being recaptured. Undeterred, on December 30, 1977, he escaped again from Garfield County Jail, crawling through a ceiling vent. Having lost 35 pounds, he arrived in Tallahassee, Florida, using the name Chris Hagen. In Florida, Bundy stayed at the Oaks apartment near Florida State University, FSU. On January 15, 1978, he broke into the Chi Omega sorority house, bludgeoning and strangling 21-year-old Margaret Bowman and 20-year-old Lisa Levy to death. He severely injured roommates Kathy Kleiner and Karen Chandler. Minutes later, he attacked 21-year-old Cheryl Thomas in a nearby duplex, but she survived. On February 9th, Bundy abducted 12-year-old Kimberly Leach from a junior high school in Lake City. Her body was found 2 months later beneath a pig shed. Bundy was stopped on February 15, 1978, in Pensacola while driving a stolen orange Volkswagen. He gave false names, but was identified by fingerprints. Leach's murder linked him to the Florida crimes. Bundy's trials were media spectacles. The Chi Omega trial began in Miami in June 1979. He acted as his own lawyer, turning the courtroom into a stage, even proposing to witness Carol Ann Boone. They married during the trial. Bite marks on Levy's body matched Bundy's teeth, sealing his fate. On July 24, 1979, he was found guilty of the Chi Omega murders and sentenced to death. In a separate trial for Leach's murder in January 1980, he received another death sentence. While in prison, Bundy married Boone in 1980. Their daughter, Rose, was born in 1982. Boone divorced him after his confessions in 1986. During appeals, Bundy began to confess to investigators, like Robert Keppel and William Hagmeyer, to delay his execution. He confessed to 30 murders in 7 states, detailing decapitation, necrophilia, and keeping trophies like heads or clothing. He attributed the first murder to 1971, Anne-Marie Burr, age 8, though unconfirmed, and detailed the 1974 Washington murders. Bundy's final appeals failed. On January 24, 1989, at 7:16 a.m., he was executed in the electric chair at Florida State Prison. Outside, a crowd chanted, "Burn, Bundy, burn!" His last words were, "I want you to give my love to my family and friends." His ashes were scattered in Washington's Cascade Mountains, where he had discarded the bodies of several victims. Bundy's psychology was complex. Diagnosed with antisocial personality disorder, characterized by narcissism, lack of empathy, and manipulative charm, he blamed pornography for his desires but showed no remorse, treating victims as objects. His crimes highlighted the failure of law enforcement coordination across states. Bundy's life, from his illegitimate birth in 1946 to his execution in 1989, is a tragic tale of deception and destruction. The families of his 30-plus victims still seek justice today, while his case aids criminal profiling and public awareness. This account, covering his childhood traumas, the terror of his murders, his escapes, and his final confessions, depicts a man who embodied the dark depths of human nature.